World of Hyatt is one of the most interesting, valuable, and powerful loyalty hotel programs in the world. They have 28 unique brands, and it is extremely easy to get amazing value out of their points. To put it in perspective how good the program can be, I am currently recording this at the Perk Hyatt in Doha, where I am staying at the Diplomat Suite, the second highest suite in the entire hotel. It's 2,700 square feet on the top floor with a massive living area, kitchenette, guest bathroom, and gigantic, absurdly, comically large outside terrace. I only paid a little bit of points plus the standard room price as a points upgrade. It is insane how good a value you can get here. Today, we're going to tell you and explain each of Hyatt's 28 unique brands. My name is Sean, and I'm here with my co-host.
Hi everyone, I'm Sherwin. That's really awesome, Sean, and really perfectly fitting for what's a special milestone in the Credit Card BS podcast. This is our 50th episode that we're releasing today about every Hyatt brand explained, and it's awesome that you have this suite to celebrate it with our audience.
Absolutely. I'm so happy to be here. It's amazing that we filmed 50 of these now, and we're going to keep plenty of more coming.
Yes, so again, this is going to just be our sort of, we're going to throw in some subjective rankings and opinions and explanations of the various brands. I do want to note that the quality of experience you get at these various Hyatt chains for any chains or brands for that matter often has to do more with particular properties than the brand itself, and sometimes it's hard to generalize. For example, I've been to certain Hyatt Places that were actually better than some Hyatt Regencies, even though technically Hyatt Regency is considered a higher end brand than Hyatt Place. Sean, I'm wondering if you have experienced stuff like this.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it really does depend on the specific property. I will note there still is a pretty strong correlation to brand. Like, it would take a really amazing, groundbreaking Hyatt Regency to beat like a Park Hyatt or something. So like, if you don't know anything else about the specific hotels, usually like brand wins. But of course, like, it totally is property dependent.
Yeah, for sure. And Sean and I have only been to a small subset of all the Hyatt properties worldwide. So, our generalizations may not match yours or another person's experience. So feel free to comment down below if you have similar different experiences, these various brands. Now, before we jump into all of these brands and give you our take on it, I wanted to mention this very unique perk that only Hyatt has called the Brand Explorer perk. How it works is for every member, for every 5 unique different brands you stay at, you earn one free 1 through 4 category 1 through 4 free night certificate, which is potentially really solid value. How it works is throughout the lifetime of your account as a member, once you stay at it's kind of like a checkbox for each of the different brands. Once you stay at every 5, you get a new free night. Once you stay at a brand, you can't check it off again. And it's not based on any calendar year or member year. It is simply based on the lifetime of your account.
Yeah, I agree. It's a really cool perk. It would be nice if it reset every year, but especially because Hyatt just keeps adding more and more brands, it makes it a very unique, interesting thing. So I think let's start getting into the rankings. And what we're going to do, these are our subjective rankings. We're going to do the level of least to most luxury for these brands, again, subjectively. And we're going to categorize this because Hyatt is kind of weird now. They've really expanded into the all-inclusive market. So we're first going to talk about all of their non-all-inclusive brands, and then we're going to talk about each of their all-inclusive brands.
Okay, sounds good. So I think we'll kick things off with UrCove. So that's UrCove. I think this is a common brand in China, if I recall correctly. I've never stayed at a UrCove, so I don't have much to say about it. How about you, Sean?
So from what I've heard, I've never stayed at one either, but from what I understand, this is like pretty much the lowest position brand in like the entire Hyatt portfolio. And so you'll find these things like dirt cheap. We're talking, like $50, $100 on the high end all over China. The problem is for a lot of these, from what I've heard, is that a foreigner cannot stay in these hotels. You actually need to be a Chinese national to stay in a lot of these. There's some like credit card restriction of accepting payments or something, apparently. So this is a very basic brand. There's not really many amenities here. You're really just looking for a place to sleep. It's still going to be clean. It's going to be modern. It's going to be nice enough, but you're not looking for anything fancy. This is positioned below like a Hyatt Place.
Sounds good. Okay, let's move on to the next one, which is Caption by Hyatt. I believe this is a fairly new brand, if I recall correctly. There's only a handful of properties.
Yeah, there's only a few of these. They're limited service brands, similar to Hyatt Place. They're pretty much like very basic, small hotels. You're not getting like room service or anything like that. I think they tend to be a bit more on the modern side. They don't look like that old or anything. They look decent. I've never stayed in one, but Sherwin, have you heard anything about these?
Yeah, I think this is probably one of the more location dependent ones because these are like fairly new. Like it's possible that some of these properties are actually really nice relative to some of the older properties that are technically higher on the tier list. That's kind of my feel of it. I don't have much experience.
I totally agree. The next brand on this list is the Hyatt Place. So Hyatt Place is an interesting brand because they're remarkably consistent. They pretty much all have like the same couch. If you've seen pictures of a Hyatt Place room, they all look basically the same. And it's still a limited service brand. So you're not talking about like any type of like room service or full dining or anything like that. But what you do have is free breakfast for all guests in the United States. In Asia, it doesn't always work that way. You sometimes have like a pool, you'll have like a gym, you'll have all the necessary amenities, but they're remarkably consistent. They're clean. They're not really modern, I would say, but some of them can be pretty decent. And really at these like, more limited service brands, there's a big focus on consistency because, if you're booking a cheaper hotel, you don't always know what you're going to get. And with a Hyatt Place, you kind of have a pretty good idea of what you're going to get. And that's a nice feeling to know because if you've become accustomed to that and you like it, you're not going to get some roach motel that has, no amenities and it's dirty or anything like that.
Yeah, I actually really like Hyatt Place, to be honest. As long as you go in without the expectation that it's going to be some full service hotel, because it's not. It is remarkably consistent compared to, other basic brands like Marriott and Hilton. In my opinion, I think it's more consistent. Oftentimes, they're also really good points priced, especially if they're in a lower category, like 1, 2, or 3. They can be very economical if you have Hyatt points. And yeah, I've had good experiences generally at Hyatt Place. The one thing is, though, if you have like top tier globalist status, it's not going to do as much for you at these types of properties. Like Hyatt Place, the most you get probably is like the 4 p.m. late checkout and the bottled water. But, like the free breakfast isn't going to do much for you because everyone already gets free breakfast at Hyatt Place. The next brand, I think, is also very similar to Hyatt Place, Hyatt House. I would rank this a little higher than Hyatt Place. From my experience staying at Hyatt Houses, there's, again, like Hyatt Place, they're not full service properties, but I find them pretty consistent. They are a little larger, so oftentimes they'll have like studio size rooms or even, sort of mini suites. And they're generally sort of like an extended stay kind of setup. Sean, have you stayed at Hyatt Houses?
I have not stayed at a Hyatt House, but I understand like they're supposed to have the kind of kitchenettes. They might have like washing and drying machines. So they are like definitely set up. It depends on the property, of course, but they are set up to be more like extended stay. You'll sometimes even find them like sister properties to Hyatt Houses. So sometimes like Hyatt Places. Like sometimes you'll see a Hyatt Place, and like I think at LAX it's like this. It's like a Hyatt Place and a Hyatt House. Or I forget if it was LAX or a different airport, but like they're actually like literally the same building. They're very, very similar. It's just one is set up to be more of like an extended stay property.
Yeah, and as a result, usually the Hyatt House rooms, if you're booking into a studio or something, are larger. Again, they could be very good value. I've stayed at Hyatt Houses that were like 5,000 points a night and very, very nice for that price, I must say. Okay, Sean, you want to talk about the next brand?
Yeah, so the next brand is Dream Hotels. Now, this could be very easily confused with Dreams, the all-inclusive brand, which it's totally different, totally a separate thing. Dream Hotels is a brand of hotels that Hyatt acquired like a year or so ago, and these are almost like lower-end W hotels. So for those of you that don't know, W hotels are kind of more like a party atmosphere. They try to be kind of upscale luxury vibe, like a classy party atmosphere. And Dream Hotels kind of remind me of that vibe, but they're just, from what I've seen of them, and there's not many of these, And from what I've heard from friends that have stayed in these, they're not that high end. They're kind of like they're full service, but they're a little older. They're a little tacky. They're not, to me, they're not the most interesting type of property. But they are supposed to be kind of more bold, a bit more like party-ish-esque atmosphere, if that makes sense. Sherwin, have you heard about dream hotels before?
I have not really known much about this. I haven't stayed at one. I know there was that one glitch one time where a particular dream hotel was selling their rooms for extremely cheap, but that deal did not go through. But that's the only thing I know about it.
Yeah, I remember that deal. It was like you could get the top suite for like $30 a night, but then they canceled it. It was a shame. The next brand is Hyatt Centric. Now, Hyatt Centric, this is an interesting brand. The kind of appeal, and this is a fairly inconsistent brand to some degree. The appeal of it is they're supposed to be centrally located in good locations in nice parts of the city, and that sounds good in theory, right? I love a hotel with a good location. But sometimes, there are hotels that aren't in the best location that are called Hyatt Centrics. Notably, the Hyatt Centric Hong Kong Victoria Harbor. It is not a very good location for a hotel. It's actually a very bad location if you know about Hong Kong hotels. Yet it still remains a Hyatt Centric. These hotels tend to be, from what I've seen, a little more modern looking. They look a little more modern and nice. I don't believe are usually full service properties depending on where you're going. I think the one in Tokyo might be full service, but they're kind of like this modern, not full service hotel, if that makes sense. So it's not going to be as big as a Regency or something like that. They tend to be a bit smaller on the size, but you're getting closer to the full service standard.
Yeah, I would agree that it's sort of inconsistent, and I think this is one of those that's going to be very property dependent. I've heard great things about the Hyatt Centric in Tokyo. I've never stayed there. I've heard great things about it. Whereas the Hyatt Centric I stayed in LA or in the LA area was pretty typical. So I would say it's the midpoint between a Hyatt Place and Hyatt Regency, which we'll talk about later, where it's not quite full service, but it's not quite as basic as a Hyatt Place or Hyatt House. And again, it's location dependent, and it could be a really good use of points, especially if they're on a lower category.
Yeah, I totally agree. So Sherwin, why don't you talk about the next brand? Because I've never stayed at this next brand, but you have, which is just Hyatt, the name Hyatt.
Yeah, so Hyatt and nothing else is a specific, I don't even know if I can call it a brand, but there's just an umbrella. It's just an umbrella for properties that are not associated with any of the other brands. I've only stayed at one of these once, which is the Hyatt Lodge in Oak Brook near Chicago. And that was a really nice property. It was only category 2. It's a great use of points. So it's really dependent. I know there's one in the Seattle area, I think on Olive 8. But, it could be, if you're trying to hit a brand explorer, it could be a useful one to pick up. But you kind of have to go out of your way to look for them because they're very property specific. I don't think there's too much to say about them in general because they're also different. It's not really a brand. So it's hard to generalize.
Yeah, it's a pretty inconsistent brand.
Yeah. Okay, so the next one is much more common, Hyatt Regency. Now, my take on Hyatt Regency is that it is more consistent than the competitors from other hotel chains, but among the various Hyatt brands, it is one of the more inconsistent. Sean, what do you think of that take?
That is the best way you could have put it possible. Because that's it. Because it's basically we've reached full service. Hyatt Regencies are usually supposed to be full service hotels. And you've reached the point where you've entered that full service market. But when you get to that tier, the tier of a Sheraton, a kind of a Westin, Marriott, Hilton, right? Just those standard full service brands, it gets so inconsistent. There's so much inconsistency where it's dude, if you're staying at a Marriott or a Hilton, it could be, or a Sheraton, it could be a really nice modern hotel, or it could be a total dump that you would never want to set foot in. And it's just so inconsistent. Hyatt Regencies are more consistent, for sure, than those brands. But among Hyatt, you're right, they're so inconsistent. If you're going to Regencies in Asia, you could be really, really nice hotels. You do Regencies in the US, you could get some really good properties, like the Hyatt Regency Huntington Beach, which is a really nice, pretty beautiful property.
It's a resort, basically, right?
It's a resort, yeah. Or you can get some pretty basic Hyatts that are just like standard, boring, unremarkable hotels.
Yeah, I would say Hyatt Regency is another one that is extremely location dependent. I've had some very mediocre stays. Heck, I've had some stays at Hyatt Regencies that were pretty old and honestly not as impressive as some of the Hyatt Places and Hyatt Houses I've stayed at. But I've also had some really nice stays at Hyatt Regencies where they did a very good job honoring the globalist benefits, for example, that you get with status. So it really is location dependent. I think it is pretty reliable though. I feel like there are huge question marks on what benefits I'm gonna get if I go to like a Marriott or a Hilton. Whereas like when I go to Hyatt Regency, like I still like in the back of my mind know like, okay, at the minimum, I know I'm gonna get these things, like these expectations will not be, broken or whatnot. But I would say one important indicator of how good a Hyatt Regency is just like its age. How long has it been since it's open? Has it been renovated? Because a lot of the Hyatt Regencies are really dated, but again, some of them are really nice.
Yeah, I totally agree with your take all around there. The next brand is Hyatt Vacation Club, and this is like Hyatt's kind of timeshare and brand. And this isn't something that usually a lot of people book outright. You can book it on points or cash. These are fairly inconsistent as well. These are resort type properties. Given that they're vacation clubs, and there's a couple of very interesting ones, like the one in like Carmel Highlands, I believe. I believe that's a Hyatt Vacation Club, and it's like got this beautiful view of the Pacific Ocean. And I think they are full service brands, but it's like they're not, you still haven't entered like the luxury segment yet. They're not like huge mega resorts. They're not as common as like, the Marriott or Hilton entry into the segment where you'll see like Marriott Vacation Clubs. Those things are like everywhere. They're big resorts. They're very common. Hyatt Vacation Clubs, I feel like, of course Hyatt does have a small portfolio, but they don't make up as big of a segment as like the Marriott ones do of their respective portfolios. Would you agree with that, Sherwin?
Yeah, I would say so. I've never stayed at one, so I really can't give, a comprehensive, rundown of my experience. But one thing to keep in mind, I believe, is that many of the World of Hyatt benefits don't necessarily apply at Hyatt Vacation Clubs. So, make sure you understand, like, if you are expecting to get full globalist benefits going to Hyatt Vacation Club, that may not be the case. And, I don't know all the details, but it's something you should check.
Definitely, yeah, for sure. So now the next brand, this is an interesting brand, JDV by Hyatt. JDV by Hyatt is like the lowest tier brand in what they call like their independent collection. So it's like their independent collection isn't a brand, it's like a subcategory of their brands. And so these are properties that are like more unique, that don't necessarily fit within a traditional, brand segment. Like a Hyatt Regency is like pretty cookie cutter, for example, but these are more unique properties. Now these are on the lower end of that segment though. So there can be some pretty nice ones. So I think like the Mission Pacific in Southern California, that's supposed to be a pretty nice one. But there are some like lower ends, like I think it's the Palms, correct me if I'm wrong, there's Palms in like Northern California, that hotel.
I think called the Wild Palms Hotel.
The Wild Palms,
it's becoming Category 1 in California. Like the pictures look pretty nice, but it is basic, potentially good mattress rent. But I actually have been to the Mission Pacific Hotel in SoCal, and it is extremely nice. I stayed there before the category went up a year ago, and it was a steal. But I thought it was extremely nice. I thought the decor was extremely unique because it kind of combined Western architecture with like Japanese types of wood in the room. So that kind of gives you a feel of like the JDV hotels are like more focused on the individual uniqueness and the designs. That's kind of my feel. Whereas, as you said, like Hyatt Regency, it's so standard everywhere you go. Whereas, you can get more individual character with these types of hotels. I haven't been to that many JDVs, but the one I went to, I really enjoyed.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's when you have these independent collection brands, they're just by definition going to be more inconsistent, because if they were consistent across them, they would just put them in a different brand. So these are more unique properties. So you're going to need to do more research on the specific one you're staying at. It's not something where it's like, oh, I want to stay in a super luxury hotel. Let me book a Park Hyatt or something. It's, you have to do a bit more research.
Yeah. The next one we should talk about is Grand Hyatt. So this is also another pretty big hotel chain. I would say it's more premium generally than Hyatt Regency. So it's not full luxury, but it's full service for sure, but it's a little bit above most Hyatt Regencies. It's very location dependent. There are some Grand Hyatts that are worse than other Hyatt Regencies. I'm just talking about generally. That's our understanding of the hierarchy.
Yeah, I agree. I think so. Grand Hyatt's like one of the criteria, like actually in the Hyatt like documents, are that it has to be like a really large hotel and they have to have like a certain amount of meeting space or whatever. So these are very big hotels all the time, like grand in the name, right? So these are large properties with a lot of rooms. The nice thing about that is when you get to some of these large properties, they might have a lot of suites, so you can get some decent globalist benefits. As you said, they're inconsistent. So like there's some really nice ones like Grand Hyatt Hong Kong is supposed to be really nice. There's Grand Hyatt Kauai, which is like one of the flagship Grand Hyatts. But then there's also some like pretty mid ones, like the Grand Hyatt I stayed at in Buckhead, Atlanta. Pretty, unremarkable property, to be honest. It wasn't that great. But so you'll find some more inconsistencies there, but consistently you will see that these are higher end than Hyatt Regencies usually, because you've really fully entered the full service segment here. I would say these are, similar in tier to like a Westin / JW Marriott, depending on the specific property. So there's definitely going to be properties that are closer to the Westin end, and like the higher end ones might be closer to like a JW Marriott level.
Yeah, again, I think similar to what I said about Hyatt Regency, I still feel like the benefits that I'm expecting when I walk into Grand Hyatt, I feel more secure about compared to like a competitor. So I still do think there's some consistency that's really good. Should we move on to the next one? So the next one is the Thompson brand of hotels. This was actually a separate independent thing that was acquired by Hyatt in the last couple of years. Have you stayed at the Thompson, Sean?
So I've stayed at two Thompsons. I've stayed at the Thompson in Cabo, and then I stayed at the Thompson in Playa del Carmen main house. I have to say, from what I've seen so far, I actually really enjoyed the Thompson brand. We're kind of entering the luxury segment here. I would go as far as saying that like Thompson hotels are like a baby luxury hotel. You're not at the tier of top tier luxury yet, but these are luxurious-esque hotels for sure. And these have like a very modern, trendy, minimalist-esque design. So these like they're kind of darker color schemes, darker woods. I've really enjoyed my stay at Thompson hotels. Dark lighting, right? They kind of feel cool, right? They're just a cool design, always pretty modern. I like their bedding. It feels luxurious. Again, it's still property dependent, but when you're going to a Thompson hotel, they're pretty, you've entered the luxury segment, the entry level luxury segment. Have you stayed at Thompson before, Sherwin?
Yes, I've enjoyed the 2 stays I've had at Thompson. So I've been to Thompson Chicago, which I really liked. It was super new and clean. It's very much, as Sean said, a sort of modern type of luxury as opposed to like a classic historic type of luxury. The breakfast there was really good, globalist benefits. I've also been to Thompson Cabo, also an amazing property. And again, I feel like, the design is very much like dark, austere, but a little trendy. I don't know how to explain it, the vibe, but it's definitely a modern type of luxury rather than old. It's super nice. If you get the chance to stay with points, consider it.
Definitely. Yeah, it's kind of like almost like a W hotel, but just like it doesn't try as hard to be bold and ostentatious and party atmosphere. The next brand is Destination by Hyatt. So this is like the mid-tier brand within Hyatt's independent collection. Now, these are somewhat inconsistent. This is not to be confused with Destination Residences by Hyatt, which is like a totally different thing. You're kind of like more in it now. You can't even really book it on points anymore. So there's 2 types of destinations. Destination Residences are like the timeshare versions where you don't get Hyatt benefits, and then Destination by Hyatts are actual like legitimate hotels which you do get full benefits at. So this is mainly talking about Destination by Hyatt. So like the one I've stayed at is the Hana Maui Hotel. Now it was not like a super modern, opulent hotel, but it was still definitely luxurious. It was like more rustic, warm service, very good food, very beautiful atmosphere. These are definitely like usually luxury hotels. But again, given that it's like an independent collection, they're just going to be a bit more inconsistent. But these are full service luxury properties, across the board pretty much.
Yeah, I can't quite recall if I've been to a destination by Hyatt. I'll have to double check. But yeah, again, it's kind of like JDV, where it's like very property dependent. Let's move on to the next one, which is the Unbound Collection. Kind of similar, also very property dependent. It is considered pretty premium in my understanding. So the two Unbound Collection hotels that I've been to that I can recall right now are the Chicago Athletic Association in Chicago, which is very interesting. It's kind of like a historic building that used to be literally the Athletic Association that they've sort of converted into a high-end hotel, but they kept a lot of the athletic elements in it as amenities for the guests to use. So compared to like the Thompson, which is more the modern luxury, that one was more like the classic type of luxury. And then the other one I've been to is Carmel Valley Ranch in Carmel, California, which I believe is Unbound Collection. And that one has a totally different feel. It's very much a resort in nature on a ranch. Super premium rooms and amenities, stuff. Pretty expensive property, and and I would say it was a very good use of points. Now the category increases, maybe not so much, but a very nice property. So, Sean, have you had any experiences at Unbound Collection hotels?
Unfortunately, I have not yet. I've had the chance to stay at one, but these are like, the premier brand within Hyatt's independent collection. So these are going to be, pretty much across the board, pretty luxurious hotels for sure. The next brand we should talk about is Andaz. I really like the Andaz brand. So I've stayed at 3 of them: Andaz Maui, Andaz San Diego, and Andaz Costa Rica. And this is also kind of similar to Thompson, like a trendy hotel style of rooms. These aren't as like dark as Thompson. These are like a light version of W hotels, where you're getting more modern, you're getting more bold, but you haven't gone over the top. Where W does try to go over the top. Andaz is more subdued, it's more subtle. A couple notable things about Andaz is at most of the properties, not all of them anymore, it seems, but at most of them you get the minibar included. And this, of course, varies heavily in quality by property, where some will literally just give you like nothing in the minibar. Like Andaz San Diego literally didn't have anything in the minibar. But like Andaz Costa Rica had pretty much a fully stocked minibar with snacks and drinks, and it was great. So that's one thing that's really nice to have a minibar included. It just makes it a lot more convenient. If you're like, it's late at night, you're thirsty, you want a snack, something like that, that's very good. But these are definitely luxury hotels. These are, pretty much across the board in most cities, in most cases, 5-star luxury hotels, especially at these like higher tier properties like Maui and Costa Rica. I did not feel like I was staying at like a second tier brand. I was like, yeah, this both of these could have been, almost at Park Hyatt level, and they were really luxurious, very nice hotels, very modern. You'll find, it's really, I don't know of any like old Andaz hotels, coming to mind. So I really, really do enjoy this brand. And yeah, I wouldn't have any issues staying with them in the future. Have you stayed at an Andaz before?
I actually haven't, but I'm curious, do you generally regard Andaz as a more premium brand than Thompson? Because I feel like Thompson's already very premium. So how does that compare to that?
I would value Andaz higher than Thompson. I think just given the brand is a little more consistent in the level of luxury. Like Thompson does have some like cheaper properties, like the Playa del Carmen properties, whereas like and the tippy top of Thompson doesn't go as high, I think. So like you do have the Thompson Cabo, which is a very high-end hotel for sure. But like I feel like I would still argue the Andaz Maui and Andaz Costa Rica are higher tier luxury hotels that offer like a higher degree of service and stuff like that. So I would still value Andaz as a bit higher than Thompson. I wouldn't put it like, oh, it's insanely, night and day difference level, but it is, given just if I knew the brand, I would say Andaz is usually higher end.
Got it. That makes sense. Okay, let's move on to the last two non-all-inclusive brands. So we have Alila. So Alila is also, I think, fairly recently acquired by Hyatt, where it's generally a resort type. So, in California, the big ones are Alila Napa Valley, Alila Ventana Big Sur, which actually is all-inclusive. I think there's one in SoCal. There's also a couple in Asia. Maldives has one.
Yeah, there's one in the Maldives. There's a bunch in Asia. There's the one in Southern California. There's not as many Alilas as these other brands. And Alila is a luxury brand focused on nature. And I love the concept, right? I love that it's supposed to be kind of like a more nature-esque hotel. It brings nature into the design elements more. It's not your typical standard big box luxury hotel. I love all that. The ones in California are amazing properties. There's only 3 in California. There's no other ones in the U.S. Alila, this one in the SoCal isn't that great, but the Napa Valley and Big Sur ones are absolutely stunning properties. I've stayed at all 3 in California. Across the board, they're very, very good hotels. My only issue with Alila hotels is they're a very inconsistent luxury brand, where you'll have truly like groundbreaking, remarkable properties like Ventana Big Sur, Napa Valley, Alila Villas Uluwatu in Bali. You'll have those type of like, or Alila Maldives, right? These super aspirational, very high-end hotels. But then you'll have some of them like Alila Ubud, Alila Manggis, some of the Alilas in like Jakarta or other parts of Indonesia. And they're still luxury hotels, right? But they're not nearly at the degree of luxury as these other aspirational properties. Where if you go to like the one I stayed in, Alila Ubud, I love the hotel. It's a small hotel, very good service, good food, great environment. But like the rooms are old and small for the basic rooms. And they've also stopped that particular hotel. They're kind of being stingy about the suite upgrades now, and they've like removed standard suites from their inventory. And it's just like an inconsistent brand. It's not something like these other brands where there's like a fairly high degree of consistency. Is these kind of vary across the board. So you really have to do some research on the property. But if you're staying at a good Alila, I mean, I have not had a bad Alila stay yet at all. So I really do enjoy the brand.
Yeah, I've not been to as many Alilas as Sean. I've been to Alila Ventana Big Sur. Absolute gem property. Highly recommend. Great use of points, though very hard to come by with the availability. I've been to Alila Napa Valley, which, is really nice, but I think it's overpriced for what it is and not worth the points, especially, now that it's category 8. But, very solid brand for sure. And I think it fits into I think Hyatt generally has like a wellness sort of vibe that they're trying to push. So like Alila, Miraval, which is like a non-inclusive we might talk about later. It kind of fits into that sort of general theme. Okay, so the last non-inclusive we talk about is Park Hyatt, which is considered, I would say, the most premium flagship Hyatt brand. So what's your take on Park Hyatt, Sean?
So I really, really like the Park Hyatt brand. So Park Hyatt, for those of you that don't know, it's in the full luxury segment. It's minimalist luxury. So it's almost like Edition hotels, if you know that from Marriott, where it's minimalist focus, but we are at the full luxury tier. There's no question about that. I think I would argue that Park Hyatts are a little higher end than Edition hotels. You're still getting full Hyatt Elite benefits, which is nice. This is a Park Hyatt I'm in. I'm enjoying it greatly. And, this is one of the cheaper Park Hyatts out there, and it's still a great, consistent hotel. And so that's what's something that's really good about Hyatt at their luxury brand at like Park Hyatt. They're pretty consistent. They're usually modern and new. A couple of them aren't, but you're really at this, you're at the full tier of luxury. What's interesting, though, I will say about Park Hyatt is even though you're in the tier of full luxury, and I'm not going to contest that at all, there are luxury brands that are for sure higher end than Hyatt. And I'm not even talking about the boutique brands. Like, I don't know about you, Sherwin, but I would argue that like St. Regis hotels or Waldorf Astoria may be considered a bit more luxurious than Park Hyatt. Now, I have no issues with Park Hyatt. I love Park Hyatts. But if someone was going to tell me, there's a Park Hyatt and there's a Waldorf Astoria or a St. Regis, I might lean to one of those brands just if I was going to go for pure luxury and if I was ignoring elite benefits. How about for you?
Yeah, I actually haven't stayed at a St. Regis. Yeah, and I was about to ask you, how do you feel about like Park Hyatt versus Ritz-Carlton or Waldorf, actually. So, we were thinking about the same thing. But, I've only stayed at 2 Park Hyatts, and I enjoyed one of them very much. The one in Dubai, extremely nice, really good. One of the best hotel breakfasts I've had with global status. The Park Hyatt in Washington, D.C., though, did not super impress me. Like, it was a nice property, but for how much money they were charging a night, it did not impress me. So, yeah, I think it really depends on the property. I've stayed at some Waldorfs that were, like, really, really nice. So I can see the argument that Waldorf might be a little higher end than Park Hyatt. But I don't know. I still feel like I'm not in this stage where I've stayed at a lot of Waldorfs and a lot of Ritz-Carltons and a lot of Park Hyatts to be able to like meaningfully distinguish them but your intuition seems right to me.
Yeah, I think it's one of, because it's like a more minimalist luxury brand, since it's not focused on that opulence and ostentatiousness, that it's just not going to always feel as, luxurious as those other brands. But that being said, amazing hotel brand. You're never going to have an issue at a Park Hyatt if you're picking the, great properties, super, super luxurious. So I think we should move on now to the all-inclusives.
Actually,
and we're going to go,
I wanted to ask, how would you compare Park Hyatt to like Ritz-Carlton from Marriott?
To Ritz-Carlton, I would put... that's tricky. So I would put it above Ritz-Carlton. I think here's what it is. Ritz-Carlton has a bigger range from low level to high level, but Park Hyatt is more consistent. So like if you go to the super aspirational Ritz-Carltons, those are going to be nicer than the super aspirational Park Hyatts. Now, of course, all Park Hyatts to a degree are aspirational, but like Ritz-Carlton Maldives absolutely blows Park Hyatt Maldives out of the water, from what I've seen. Ritz-Carlton I'm failing to come up, I'm trying to come up with examples, but there's not a lot of cities where there's Park Hyatt, so it's a bit tricky. But like I think Ritz-Carltons can get, to a higher degree of luxury than Park Hyatts can. At those super, super high-end ones. That being said, though, at the low end, if you go to some like loser Ritz properties, which, feels funny to say at loser Ritz-Carlton, but if you go to like some of the worst ones, I think the Park Hyatts are more consistent across the board than the Ritz-Carltons. So it's got a bigger swing on the Ritz-Carlton side, but Park Hyatt, you're going to find more consistency, across the board there.
Yeah. I will say one thing that I think gives Park Hyatt the edge is the delivery of elite benefits. So like as a globalist, if you go to Park Hyatt, you're going to get, free parking on free nights. You're not going to pay a resort fee. You're going to get free breakfast. You're going to get a suite upgrade if available, right? Now, as a platinum, for example, Marriott going to Ritz-Carlton, you're not going to get suite upgrades. As a titanium, you're not going to get free breakfast unless I think they were talking about changing it. I don't know, right? You're going to pay a resort fee. You're going to pay for parking. So I still think and this might have more to do with Hyatt's loyalty program in general rather than like these two specific brands. But again, there is this consistency aspect of Hyatt that we like, which is why we talk about them so much. Their consistency, their loyalty program, and the value of their points. Now, I think this episode's gone a little long, so I hope our viewers will forgive us if we save the all-inclusive discussion for perhaps another episode and wrap up here. But before we end today, I want to remind everyone this is our 50th episode of the Credit Card BS podcast, which is an incredible milestone. Honestly, I'm so grateful for Sean and for everyone tuning in, listening to us talk. When I started this project with Sean earlier last year, it was just for fun. I did not really expect that many people to listen to it. So the growth that we've seen is truly amazing. And I just can't thank all of you enough for being loyal listeners of our podcast. Sean, do you have anything you want to say?
No, it's been great. Thank you all for watching. I mean, it's really amazing how consistent our episodes have been getting views, and it's been really fun to film this and all these like cool locations and talk about all these topics. It's a lot of times, like if you're trying to film a YouTube video on this stuff, it's kind of like it has to be so scripted, and you got to put all these effects in, and you can't really just kind of talk about your own opinions about things without, thinking about it too much in advance. So it's really nice to have like a podcast format and people that are listening to, what we think about all these programs and everything. So yeah, thank you all so much for watching. It has really been amazing to film all these.
Yeah, awesome. So as usual, if you enjoyed today's episode, please consider giving this video a like and subscribe. We're trying to grow our audience as usual, and doing that really helps with the algorithm. If you're interested in applying for any credit cards that might allow you to stay at some of these hotels for free, please consider using the links down in the description below. It greatly helps support the channel. You have no idea. And Sean, why don't you plug our Discord?
So yeah, if you want to connect with an elite group of credit card enthusiasts and award travelers, check out the 100% free Travel Lane Discord at the link in the description or at the pinned comment down below. You'll be a bunch of people in there you can learn from. Sherwin and I are in there. You will learn a ton, I promise you. And you also get amazing deal alerts, for example, if there's another amazing sweet deal to book, something like this. So thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next week.